While I was away on a business trip, I trusted my family to care for my 10-year-old son. Then I got a panicked call. Mom, they left me. They just drove away. The house is locked. When I called them, they laughed and hung up. I cut them off financially and called the police, but what they found when they arrived left me absolutely speechless. I never imagined that my own family would betray me like this. I had always believed that no matter what, blood ties meant something. That was my first mistake. For years, I had been the one holding my family together. My mother, Eleanor, was never an easy woman. She had a way of making me feel like, no matter what I did, it wasn't enough. She never worked a day in her life after my father passed away. She had convinced herself that as her daughter, it was my duty to take care of her. And I did. I paid for her mortgage, her car, even the ridiculous shopping sprees she claimed were necessary for her happiness. Then there was my brother, Eric. He was always the reckless one. From the time we were kids, he was the one getting into trouble, always finding a way to charm his way out of it. As an adult, he was no different. Except now, instead of school fights and pranks, he was knee-deep in gambling debts and shady business deals. I lost count of how many times I bailed him out. Every time he swore, it would be the last. Every time he lied. At first, I didn't mind helping. I was successful. As a criminal defense attorney in Atlanta, I made more than enough to support my husband, my son, and, unfortunately, the two parasites that shared my blood. My husband, Jacob, often warned me, "Olivia, they'll take as much as you give," he would say. He had a way of seeing things clearly, something I struggled with when it came to my family. But Jacob was always working, always away on assignments for his civil engineering firm, so it was easy to ignore his advice. And then there was Noah, my sweet, 10-year-old boy. The only thing in my life that truly made sense. He was smart, kind, and loved soccer more than anything. He looked up to his cousin, Ryan, my brother's son. For years, Ryan had been like a big brother to him. But as time went on, something changed. Ryan stopped visiting. He ignored Noah's texts. I didn't understand why, until I saw how Eric and my mother talked about me. I was nothing more than a bank to them, a wallet they could tap into whenever they pleased. The final straw came when Eric called me one evening, his voice desperate. "Liv, I just need a little more. 50,000, that's it. It's a business investment, guaranteed return." I laughed bitterly. Last time it was 20,000. Before that, 10. "I'm done, Eric." Silence. Then, in a tone colder than I had ever heard from him, he said, "You'll regret this." At the time, I brushed it off. It wasn't the first time he had tried to guilt-trip me. I had no idea what was coming. A week later, a big trial kept me in court late. It was a high-profile case, one that could define my career. I had no choice but to leave Noah with my mother. She had watched him before. I didn't think twice. That evening, my phone rang. It was Noah. His voice was shaking. "Mom, they left. Grandma, Uncle Eric, and Ryan. They just drove away." I froze. "What do you mean they left?" "They packed their bags, got in the car, and left." "I can't get inside, Mom. The door is locked." A cold dread settled over me. I grabbed my car keys, my hands shaking. "Stay right there, baby. I'm on my way." I called my mother. Straight to voicemail. Eric, the same. By the time I reached the house, Noah was sitting on the porch, his face pale. He ran into my arms the second he saw me. I could feel his little body trembling. "It was like they didn't even care, Mom," he whispered. I pulled back and cupped his face. "Did they say anything? Anything at all?" He hesitated, then nodded. "Grandma said you'd learn your lesson." The words cut through me like a knife. I should have seen this coming. This wasn't about Noah. This was about me. My refusal to keep feeding them. My refusal to be their personal ATM. They wanted to teach me a lesson. They thought I would crawl back, apologize, beg them to return. They didn't know me at all. The next thing I did was call the police. I could barely hear the dispatcher over the pounding of my heart. My 10-year-old son was abandoned by his guardian. "I need officers here immediately." When the officers arrived, I explained everything. They took my statement, took Noah's. Then they checked the security cameras. I hadn't even thought about them, but now, watching the footage, my blood ran cold. The video showed them laughing as they drove away. Not rushed. Not panicked. They were smiling. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just manipulation. This was cruelty. The officers told me they would investigate, but I already knew what needed to be done. I wasn't just going to cut them off financially. I was going to make sure they paid for what they did. By the time we got home, Noah was exhausted. I tucked him into bed, running my fingers through his hair. "I promise you," I whispered, "they'll never hurt you again." I walked into my office and opened my laptop. First, I called the bank. All automatic transfers to my mother and brother? Cancelled. Their credit cards? Frozen. Their rent payments? Gone. Then I called my firm's private investigator. I want everything on my mother and brother. I want to know where they are, who they're talking to, and most importantly, what they're hiding. I already knew Eric had his hands in something illegal. He was reckless. He thought he was untouchable. He had just given me the perfect excuse to tear him apart. The next morning, I walked into my office, where my assistant, Danielle, looked up from her desk. "Miss Bennett," she said hesitantly, "your mother has called 5 times. Your brother, too." I smiled coldly. "Log the calls. I don't need to hear their excuses." I had been kind for too long. They wanted a lesson? They were about to get one. The calls kept coming. My phone buzzed relentlessly. My mother, my brother, even unknown numbers I suspected were them, using different phones. I ignored every single one. I could imagine their growing panic, their desperation to get through to me, but they had made their choice. Now they would face the consequences. I knew they weren't calling out of regret or guilt. No, they were calling because for the first time in years, I had cut them off completely. No more money, no more bailouts, no more safety net. And they were drowning. At work, I buried myself in my cases. It was easier than thinking about the betrayal, easier than reliving Noah's terrified voice on the phone. My assistant, Danielle, kept me updated on the investigation I had started. She didn't ask questions, just handed me updates in quiet understanding. 3 days after I cut them off, Danielle walked into my office, her expression unreadable. She placed a thin folder on my desk. "It's about Eric," she said. I opened the file, scanning the contents. My suspicions were correct. Eric had been involved in a series of illegal business deals. Fraud, money laundering, unpaid debts to some very dangerous people. He was in deep trouble, deeper than even I had imagined. And my mother? She knew. She had known all along. The investigator had found multiple bank transactions linking her to Eric's schemes. She wasn't just enabling him, she was part of it. I leaned back in my chair, gripping the arms of it tightly. My own mother had chosen him. She had chosen a criminal, a liar, a gambler over her own daughter and grandson. And when I refused to be their puppet, she had helped him hurt my child. That realization lit something inside me. Not just anger, fury. That evening, I sat Noah down at the dinner table. His eyes still held a trace of sadness, but I could tell he was trying to move forward. I reached across the table and took his hand. "Noah, I want you to know something," I said. "What happened will never happen again. I promise." He looked up at me, searching my face. "Are they coming back?" I shook my head.
"No, sweetheart.
Not this time." After Noah went to bed, I picked up my phone. It was time to act. I called an old friend, Detective Mark Simmons, someone I had worked with in my early years as a defense attorney. He answered after 2 rings. "Olivia Bennett," he said, his voice carrying a hint of amusement. "It's been a while. What can I do for you?" "I have a situation," I said, getting straight to the point. "A case involving fraud, money laundering, and child neglect." There was a brief pause. "Tell me everything." And I did. I laid it all out. Eric's debts, my mother's involvement, and most importantly, how they had abandoned Noah. When I finished, there was silence on the other end of the line. Then Mark said, "I'll see what I can do." The next morning, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something told me to answer. The second I picked up, I heard Eric's voice. "Olivia, we need to talk." I laughed. A sharp, bitter sound. Now you want to talk. After what you did.
He sighed.
You don't understand, okay? Things got complicated. I felt my jaw tighten. You abandoned my son. You left him alone and locked out of the house. Explain to me how that's complicated. A pause. Then, it wasn't my idea. It was Mom's. She said you'd cave if we did this. I felt something snap inside me. So, you went along with it? You don't get it, he said, his voice suddenly desperate. I owe money, Liv. A lot of money. Dangerous people. I needed your help. I exhaled slowly, steadying my voice. And instead of asking like a decent human being, you tried to manipulate me. You used Noah. I had no choice. There's always a choice. Before he could respond, I said, you should probably answer your door. There was silence. Then, in the background, I heard loud knocking. What the? Let me guess. Police? I smiled as I heard the shouting, the commotion. Then the sound of handcuffs clicking. Olivia. Eric's voice turned frantic. What did you do? I spoke calmly. I did what I should have done a long time ago. I hung up. For the first time in years, I felt light. Later that evening, I got a call from Mark. It's done, he said. Eric's in custody. Charges include fraud, money laundering, and outstanding debts to criminal enterprises. He's looking at a long time behind bars. I nodded, gripping my phone tighter. And my mother? She wasn't home, but we'll find her. I already knew where she was. The investigator had tracked her to a cheap motel on the outskirts of town, hiding, waiting, hoping I'd come running. She still thought I would forgive her. She was wrong. That night, Noah and I sat in the living room, watching one of his favorite soccer games on replay. He curled up beside me, and I ran my fingers through his hair. Mom, he asked softly. Yes, sweetheart. Are we safe now? I swallowed the lump in my throat. Yes, I whispered. We're safe now. But I wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. I should have felt relief knowing Eric was behind bars. But I didn't. Not yet. Not while she was still out there. My mother, the woman who raised me, who once kissed my bruised knees and told me monsters weren't real, turned out to be the most dangerous monster of them all. The one who used love like a leash and guilt like a weapon. Eric may have been desperate, pathetic in his endless gambling and lies. But Eleanor? She had planned this. She had looked me in the eye for years, told me she loved me, told me I was her pride and joy, while bleeding me dry, one financial favor at a time. And when I finally said no, she didn't just cut me off, she targeted my son. She made Noah a pawn, a bargaining chip, a weapon to make me bend. She knew where my weakness lived, right there in my boy's bright eyes and hopeful heart. I knew exactly where she was hiding. A dingy little motel on the outskirts of town, probably still clinging to the last scraps of pride, telling herself I'd come crawling back. She always thought she had power over me, that I'd never turn my back on her, not fully. She thought I'd feel guilty, that blood was thicker than betrayal. She had never been more wrong. I waited 2 full days before going to her. I wanted her to stew in that cheap, smoky motel room, wondering if I was coming for her, or if I'd finally, truly cut her off. I wanted her to feel helpless for once, to experience that cold uncertainty she'd made me live with for years. When I finally knocked on her door, she opened it within seconds, like she'd been pacing. Her eyes widened, her expression twisting into a mask of sweet concern. Olivia, she said, voice gentle and rehearsed. I was just about to call you. I smiled, but it wasn't warm. Oh, I'm sure you were. The room was stale, the curtains yellowed with age and smoke. Her suitcases were zipped up by the door. I noticed how clean she looked, hair done, lipstick fresh, her nails still painted the same cherry red. She wasn't broke yet, but she was preparing for it. I walked in without asking, my heels echoing softly on the linoleum floor. She closed the door behind me, her eyes studying me like I was a stranger. Going somewhere? I asked, turning to face her. She laughed lightly, brushing imaginary lint from her shoulder. Sweetheart, This has all been a misunderstanding. I never meant for any of this to upset you. You know how your brother can be, always making poor choices. I just got caught in the middle. I crossed my arms, letting my smile sharpen. And yet, you helped him. She faltered just a bit, but she was good at this. She knew how to shift blame without blinking. He was in trouble, Olivia. Real trouble. I was trying to protect him. You know I didn't mean to hurt you or Noah. If you what? If you left my child sitting alone and locked out of a house? If you tried to scare me into reopening the money pipeline? I wasn't yelling. My voice was calm, flat. And I could see how much more that shook her. I wasn't emotional anymore, I was cold. She started to say something else, probably a new lie or excuse, but I raised a hand. Stop. Just stop. Her lips pressed together tightly. Her eyes shifted toward her phone on the nightstand. She was still hoping for Eric to call, still dreaming of someone to save her. I reached into my bag and pulled out the manila folder I'd brought. I tossed it on the bed like a dropped gavel. Do you know what these are? She hesitated before picking them up. Her eyes scanned the first page, and I watched her go pale. Her name, her account numbers, her transfers. The ones that directly connected her to Eric's fraud. Not just an enabler, an accomplice. Her fingers trembled. Where did you get this? I tilted my head. You raised a lawyer, remember? She took a deep breath, trying to compose herself, but I saw the shift. Her shoulders straightened, and she looked me in the eye. Her mask snapped back on. And what are you going to do, Olivia? Turn me in? I'm your mother. That word, mother, sounded so hollow coming from her, like a line she read off a script she no longer understood. I stepped closer. You stopped being my mother the second you used my child to manipulate me. She swallowed hard. For the first time, I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before.
Fear.
Without a word, I pulled out my phone and hit play on the audio file. Her voice filled the air, clear and calm. Too calm.
Don't worry, Eric. She'll give in.
She's too soft. Just leave Noah for a few hours. She'll come running. By tomorrow, we'll have the money. The recording ended, but the silence afterwards screamed louder. She took a step back, voice cracking. Olivia. I wasn't thinking clearly. I slid my phone back into my purse. The police will be here soon. She blinked rapidly. You wouldn't. I stepped closer, quiet but firm. I would. And I did. There was a knock at the door. Her face twisted in panic. Olivia, please don't do this. I didn't flinch. Like you said, this is just a misunderstanding. The door opened. 2 officers entered, their faces blank but professional. Miss Bennett, one of them asked me. I nodded. That's her. Eleanor stumbled back as they approached. Please, Olivia, she whispered again, her voice cracking. But I didn't beg. I didn't argue. I just stood still as they cuffed her and read her rights. For decades, I had carried her, paid her bills, covered her lies, forgave the unforgivable.
But now?
Now she had nothing. I turned my back before they walked her out. I didn't need to see her cry. Outside, the air was cooler than I expected. The sky was beginning to darken, the wind just soft enough to remind me I was still breathing. My hands didn't shake. My heart didn't race. For the first time in my life, I was truly, completely free. The trial didn't take long. The evidence was overwhelming. The bank records, the voice recordings, the security footage, it was all there, laid out in perfect, undeniable detail. My mother tried to fight it at first, putting on her usual act, shedding fake tears, playing the victim like she had so many times before. But this time, there was no one left to believe her lies. Not even Ryan, who sat in the courtroom, his eyes locked on the floor, refusing to meet her gaze. Eric had already taken a plea deal. The moment he realized how deep he was in, he did what he had always done, he looked for a way out. And throwing my mother under the bus was his only option. He admitted to everything, to using my money, to committing fraud, to abandoning Noah because they thought it would break me. It didn't. When the judge read the final sentence, 8 years for Eric, 5 for my mother, there was no satisfaction in it. No joy. Just a quiet, final ending to a chapter of my life I should have closed a long time ago. I sat in the back of the courtroom, listening to my mother's pleas, her desperate sobs as she begged for leniency. I didn't move.
I didn't react.
She had taught me well. Crocodile tears meant nothing. After the sentencing, I walked outside and took a deep breath. The sky was clear, the air crisp. For the first time in years, I felt light. Noah was waiting for me by the car. He had been too young to sit through the trial, but he knew enough. When I reached him, he took my hand and squeezed it. "Is it over?" he asked quietly. I looked down at him, at my son, the only family that had ever truly mattered. "Yes, sweetheart. It's over." The weeks that followed were strange, almost too quiet. For years, my phone had never stopped ringing with demands, with guilt trips, with manipulations disguised as motherly love.
Now?
Silence. I wasn't sure if I liked it or if it unsettled me. But I knew one thing. I was never going back. I sold my mother's house. The luxury apartment I had been paying for, the car she drove, the credit cards under my name. I wiped it all away like it had never existed. It wasn't out of spite. It was out of necessity. I had spent my life saving them from themselves, and all it had done was make them weaker, greedier, more cruel. Cutting them off was never about revenge. It was about survival. Ryan was placed in foster care after Eric's sentencing. He had no one left, no mother, no father, no grandmother willing to fight for him. I thought about reaching out, about trying to help, but in the end, I didn't. I had done enough saving for one lifetime. And besides, Ryan had made his choice. He had stood by his father, mocked my son, abandoned Noah when he needed him most. Maybe one day, he would realize the weight of that decision. Maybe one day, he would come looking for answers. But I wouldn't be waiting. Noah, on the other hand, thrived. Slowly, the worry in his eyes faded. The nightmares that had woken him up for weeks after the incident became less frequent. And one afternoon, months later, he came home from school, grinning ear to ear, his soccer jersey covered in dirt. "I scored the winning goal today," he announced proudly, holding up his medal. I knelt down, cupping his face in my hands. "I'm so proud of you, Noah." He looked at me carefully, then asked, "Are you happy now, Mom?" I smiled, but this time it wasn't forced. It wasn't pretending. "Yes, baby, I really am." That night, as he slept, I sat alone in the living room, the quiet wrapping around me like a blanket. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of it. There was nothing lurking in the shadows, no threats waiting on the other end of the phone. Just peace. I poured myself a glass of wine, letting the past settle behind me. My mother and Eric had tried to teach me a lesson. Instead, I had taught them one. And I had won.